So in this video, we're going to continue on from the tutorial where we actually inserted all the columns onto our model. Now we're going to start inserting beams. So first thing we're going to do is actually go to our first floor level. So if you go to the floor plans, click on first floor, so it'll open up. And again, just to tidy things up again, I'm going to go to the view tab and just close all the inactive windows. Again, if your computer is a little bit slow like mine, that will help things. So now we're here on the first floor. Again, we have our grid lines, we have our columns that we put in the previous video. So we're going to put in our beams. So now we're going to go to the first floor plan. We're in the first floor plan. We're going to click on the structures tab again. Then we're going to click on beam. So structures and beam. So again, normally we'd have a specific type of beam, but we're just going to use whatever the default one comes up. So the one I have here is a UB universal beam 305 by 102 by 225. So whatever your default one comes up, you can just use that. And what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in. We're going to click on the midpoint of this column here, and then the midpoint of this column here, and we'll see the beam shows up here. So we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to go across again. The command, like previously when we were doing the columns, or actually we're doing the annotation, is actually continued until we cancel it. So, and it's going to continue from the last point. So we'll just click on the midpoint of all the columns going across. Again, that's highlighted by the purple triangle. So just go across and you'll see the text of the beam shows up. Again, this is useful for engineers who want to see what beams are being used. And then we can go to the last one over here. So you can see, and then just hit escape a couple of times just to cancel that out. And see we have our along grid line number 1, we now have a row of beams. So another point that we should have mentioned at the start is actually if the columns are not showing up on your first floor plan, that could be to do with the view range. So along the property tab, we're just going to click on, we're on the floor plan, so we're going to click on the first floor plan properties. So if you go down here through the different sections, there's a topic called view range, if I can see it. So here we are. So view range, we're going to click on edit. You see this little dialog box shows up. So view depth. So here it's actually for me it's actually set to 1 meter, 1.8 meters. That means it's going to show everything from everything 1.8 meters below the first floor. That's quite a lot. So as long as you can see them, that's the main thing. But just to match what we have in the notes, I'm going to set this to -300. Click apply again. It shouldn't make any difference. View depth is above the bottom of the C plane. Oh yeah, so you can't obviously make this one different. So okay, we'll set this one to 200 maybe. Actually no, we'll just actually do this for 300. Keep it consistent with the notes. Click apply, and then we can click OK. And again, now if you couldn't see the columns previously, you should be able to see them now. So that's just adjusting the view range. So what we're going to do next now, we want to actually do the same thing on each of the grid lines. So we've done grid line number 1. We need to put beams on all of these. And again, we could do them individually, which would not be the best use of our time, or we can use the copy function. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select each of the beams. So if you press Control on your keyboard and just hover over them and just give them a click. So go the whole way across. Let's see, so now they're all selected. Using the Modify tab, which should be open up, we're going to click on the copy icon. And again, use a nice base point. So we're going to use the end point here as the base point for the copy command. And we'll just put them down here. And again, if everything's been placed correctly at the start, they should be placed correctly each time as we go down. So just click on the end point of each of the grid lines till you get down to the bottom. Hit escape a couple of times. And you should have something that looks like this. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to put in beams, but going along the lettered grid lines. Again, it's going to be the same process as last time. So again, just so you're not following me along with everything, I'm going to pause it. You can pause the video for a few minutes while you do the beams. Again, I'll just do that quickly for you. In the structures tab, click on beam, and then all you have to do is basically click on the center point of the column and the center point of the column. You can basically draw them individually along one grid down to here, and then use the copy function to copy them over onto each one of the grid lines. So pause the video now and you can work on that, and once you've got them all done you can press play again. So if you've managed to copy all the beams along the numbered grid lines, you should have something looking like this. Again, if you weren't too sure if it doesn't look like the way it's supposed to, like it does here on screen, just go back, see how I modeled the horizontal beams, and just repeat the same process for the vertical beams, and you should have something that looks like this. And again, there's always a good way to check, because we're actually drawing in 3D almost. Well, actually not almost, we definitely are drawing in 3D, but even though it's a 2D plane we're looking at, if you click on the little 3D icon, which is the house up the top here, we'll see the 3D view will come up, and hopefully we'll see all our beams. And here we are, we can see the beams. Now, if you notice, actually, when I zoomed in out, the beams disappear and you can see the coloured lines. That's to do with the analytical model, so don't worry about that. The main thing we're looking at is the beams, so you can zoom in and you can see all our beams are there. So that's good. This is exactly what you want. And if you haven't guessed it, the next thing we're going to do is going to copy these up on all the other floors. But before we do that, we're actually going to just finish installing beam systems. So we have these larger beams on the outside, but before we actually copy them up, we're going to just finish off this floor. So we're going to insert a beam system, just kind of internal beams here. Again, that'll help hold the floor up. So that's the next step to do. So we're going to go back to our first floor plan. Here we go. So we should, again, make sure your floor plan looks like this before you go any further. So we're going to install a beam system. So a beam system is a run of beams at a given spacing. It is often used to model secondary beams or purlins. So we're going to go to our first floor plan, which we have here, the project browser, and under the structures tab, which are open, we're going to click on beam system. So it's in here beside structure. I'm going to click on beam system. So under the modify place structural beam system, we're just going to change a few little things here. We're going to change the layout rule to maximum spacing. Again, this will differ depending what you want to do. You can set the beams that are going to go in these areas at a fixed distance, a fixed number. We're just going to set them at a maximum spacing. And then we're going to actually set that maximum spacing to 2 meters, so 2000. Again, remember, we're always working in millimeters here. And we'll just make sure I have everything else here. Okay, yep, that looks good. So now what we're going to do next is sketch beam system. So it's going to click on this little icon up here on the top. So now we're going to insert our beam system. So we're going to use the rectangular boundary tool. So again, the ribbon's going to change to this. So it's the modify create beam boundary ribbon. So we see a little section here in the draw. There's different options here. If you hover over them, don't click anything yet. We can click lines and all this. This is basically how it's going to help us place the beams. But we're actually just going to use the rectangle option because we want to place beams in these squares. So rectangle option is the easy way to do it. Otherwise you do individual lines, which would be a waste of time and effort. So we're going to click on the rectangular option, and then what we're going to do is going to basically go to grid intersection A1, which is here, and drag it all the way down to, what is this one before I said, B2. So A1 to B2, so basically top left corner to the bottom right corner of this section of the model. And again, you'll know you're in the right place when you got the little square endpoint. So click that one. And we'll see then you should have something that looks like this. So the next thing we need to do is actually just change the span direction of the beam. So you see the way the lines up here in the top are showing. This means that when we go to draw these beams, the beam system is going to put the beams in this direction. But for this sake, we actually want to have the beams going from top to bottom. So we want to actually move these two lines down onto the vertical one. So to do that, we're just going to change the span directions, or the beam direction, whatever it's called. So here we are. So again, in the same tab, we're going to click on beam direction. And all we do now is actually just click on this beam here, going from the top to bottom, or from grid 1 to 2. And you'll see the line icon, the two kind of magneto lines will move from here down here. This means that any beams that we go in are going to be going in this direction. And again, once we're happy with this, once you've got your beams in the right direction, we're going to go up to our ribbon. You see the little green tick, we're just going to click that. In Revit, when you change something, it always has this little finish mode. In AutoCAD, sometimes you just hit enter, things would work, but in Revit, you need to, a lot of the options, you have to go to this and click on the green tick to finish whatever work you're doing. So we click this, and we'll see now the beams show up. And it's asked me to save my project, and yes, because I haven't done it myself in a few minutes. Don't want to waste all that good work. So now we click on save, and now we see we have our beams. And again, they're all annotated with the same beams we did. So now what we want to do is going to repeat this process for each individual bay. Again, it's going to be a little bit of work, but again, it's good practice. The whole point of this is actually to get you used to using the icons. So I'll do one more quickly. Again, if you're not too sure, go back and watch the previous few minutes, but we're going to go to structure, beam system. This information here along the modify place structural beam system should be the same. Just make sure it's at maximum spacing. You've got 2 meters. I'm going to click on this sketch beam system here, and then select your rectangular tool, and then go from the one corner of the bay, and if you're not too sure, you can zoom in and go to the other corner. And then finally, by default, the beam direction is going this way. We want to make it go this way, so click on your beam direction. I'm going to select the beam going from grid line 1 to 2. Here we go. Click our green tick icon. And there we go. Our beam system is there. So again, now what you're going to do is pause the video and then go repeat this for each one of your bays. It'll take you a few minutes, 10 to 15 minutes maybe to do. But again, by the end of it, you will definitely have the hang of installing beam system. So pause the video, and when you finish that, you can press play and we'll continue on to the next step. Okay, so once you've completed all the beam systems, you should have something that looks like this. Again, there was a bit of work to get through all these individually, but again, it's also just very good practice. My computer is slowing down. There we go. So see, if your computer has a few different programs running, it might slow down in terms of when you're zooming in and out. But we can see we've got all the beam systems in each individual bay. So this is what yours should look like once you've got all the systems installed. Again, a good way to check to make sure everything is okay is to go to the 3D view. And that looks good. If you kind of zoom in, again, I'm just going to set this to shaded so it's easier to see. So we have our beams, our columns, we have our external beams, we have our internal beam systems. So this all looks good. Everything, there's nothing obviously sticking out somewhere where it shouldn't be going. So hopefully yours looks like this. If it doesn't look like this, again, just go back. Maybe when your beam systems is in the correct position. Maybe when you're placing the beam system, you didn't actually connect onto the kind of the center of the grid lines. You might have just moved to the side of it maybe. So just go back and double check. And you can go back on the first floor and just double check that you always got it in the very center. Sometimes these might move a little bit off to the side and that might change the position. So easy mistake to fix, easy mistake to make. So that's the main thing. We can get it sorted out. So the next thing we want to do is copy these beams onto a new level. So obviously we don't really want to have to do all that again for each level because we'd be here all day. So what we can do is actually we can use this. We're going to copy the floors up onto the floors up onto the next levels all the way up to the roof level. So first of all, what we're going to do, we're going to select everything we can see here. Again, we looked at our different selection tools, and we're going to just go from the bottom right hand corner, drag it up here to the side, and now we can see that everything up here is selected. So obviously if we want to copy things up, we don't want to copy all the stuff, we don't want to copy the grid lines and different things like that. So what we can do is we can filter out our selection. So once we have selected everything, you'll see the modify multi-select ribbon shows up. Again, we've seen before, so we can see it on the filter icon here. If we click on filter, again, it comes up with a lot of different options. We're going to deselect grids because we don't want to copy them up, and we're going to deselect the structural columns because we don't have them. We can bring the tags, we can bring the primary and secondary. Again, if you're using a different version of Revit, these could be called girder and joists. Model groups, I'll just untick that. We don't need that for now. Yours, you might not have model group there, but don't worry about it if you don't. So we just want to copy up the beam systems, the structural framing, primary, secondary, or girder and joists, and then our tags. So we're just going to click apply, and then OK. And we'll see now the grid lines have all been deselected because they're not actually blue anymore. So don't click on anything else now, otherwise you're going to lose it all. So just our beams, our beam systems, and the columns are all good to go. Oh, sorry, not our columns, I should say. We untick them. So what we want to do next is we're going to copy these elements to the clipboard by selecting the copy to clipboard icon. So again, if you go over here, we have the clipboard section. Go to this little icon here, copy to clipboard. Just click it. And again, that's copied onto our clipboard, so it's saved. And then we want to paste the beams. We're going to paste them to the second floor and the roof levels. So we're going to select paste. So again, it's the icon here. We click the little drop down button underneath it. And again, we're going to paste aligned to selected view. So this one here is the third one down. And another little screen should pop up. And again, we just basically want to select the floors we want to put them to. So we're going to just work on the floor plans. So we're going to click on the roof level and the second floor. They're already on the first floor and we don't need them on the ground floor. So we're going to put a floor down there later on. So we just want to put beams, all that beams and beam system up on the second floor and the roof floor, second floor and roof level, I should say. So select these two and then just click OK. And again, that actually changes everything or copies everything up onto other levels. So you see a lot of hard work to just do it on one floor, but then there's enough kind of different tools we can do to kind of copy it up. So again, speed things up. You don't have to draw all those individually again. So what we'll just do is we'll go to our second floor here just to make sure it's all good. And again, just if you're not too sure about the view range, remember the view range was just showing basically what was going to show from the different levels. So we're on the second floor. We want to be able to see the columns from the previous level. So again, it's set to minus 1.8. We had it set to minus 300, but 1.8 is fine. It's okay. As long as you can see everything you're supposed to see, it's all good. So we'll just click OK. We'll check our 3D view again, going back here, and then we'll see we've got our 3 floors, we've got our columns, and we've got beams on the first floor, second floor, and the roof level. So you can see this is actually a fairly complicated looking model. And could you imagine trying to draw this in AutoCAD, even just a 2D section in AutoCAD? There'd be a lot of lines, a lot of things that could go wrong. Again, even from trying to draw in 3D in AutoCAD, which isn't really done anymore, but it used to be done. Drawing this would have been quite the feat and taken up a lot of time. But with Revit, because you're drawing with objects, you just insert in the objects. All you have to do is actually place them in the correct position. You should be able to produce a model like this fairly quickly. Okay, so we're going to actually that's the end of this part of the tutorial. So the next part of the tutorial is actually we're going to be going in and changing some of our structural elements, so the beams and columns. So before we move on to the next video, make sure that you have everything here correct. Make sure your beam systems are correct. Again, go into 3D view, make sure it's all good. Check your floor plans, make sure everything is on the floor plan, the second floor plan, the first floor plan, and the roof plan. Make sure everything is there, that you can see everything. Once you're confident that everything is good to go, then you can move on to the next video. Okay, thank you.